What do you do when you've been in a toxic relationship and you're finally out, but you just don't know how to move on? Some of you might still have feelings for a toxic ex or have some underlying guilt or something that keeps you from fully moving on. And that is totally normal, especially when you have been in an abusive relationship. My name is Claire, and this channel is dedicated to helping you find success, happiness, and level up your life. Go ahead and subscribe now for more videos. Today I'm going to share with you my top tips for how to move on from a toxic relationship. So if you have been emotionally abused or physically abused and you have finally gotten out of the toxic relationship that you have been struggling in and dealing with for so long, firstly, I want to say congratulations, because that is a huge step. You have been able to recognize that you were in an unhealthy situation and you have gotten yourself out. So that is awesome. This is something that you should be proud of. It's going to help you build your self-esteem, and you should feel good about yourself, because not everyone can get out of those situations, and sometimes it takes a lot of work and it's a very difficult process. So the fact that you're out is such a relief already. Next, you need to let go of guilt and any self-blame that you might be carrying. A lot of people who've been abused, they will put it on themselves as though it is their own fault that their abuser was treating them that way. So you might think that you deserved the treatment, or you deserved the abuse, or you deserved to be yelled at, or whatever type of abuse you were dealing with, because you did something wrong or you were at fault somehow. And this is completely wrong, because that is something that keeps us trapped in the situation, and it's often due to having low self-esteem. So we don't have boundaries, we don't have standards, and we somehow let these abusive situations happen and somehow justify them as thinking that we deserve that and that we did something to provoke that. That is completely wrong. You do not deserve abuse, and no relationship should be toxic in that way. The first foundation of a healthy relationship is to be free of emotional, physical, psychological abuse. You want to be able to communicate properly and get along even during hard times. So let go of that guilt. The next thing to do in order to fully move on is just take some time for yourself to refocus on who you are and who you want to be. So you might have lost a lot of your self-esteem, maybe lost your own purpose and your own being in that toxic relationship. So it might be that you just don't know what your next step is or who you really are. It's the perfect time to focus on yourself and build up your self-esteem. You want to evolve into a person that would never allow yourself to be abused. And you can create those boundaries and have those standards that you didn't have before that allowed you to be vulnerable to it. So by taking time for yourself, you can get back your self-esteem. And I will also be doing another video dedicated to building up your self-esteem. Next, you want to get rid of any gifts or anything that has to do with your toxic ex, because every time you look at them, you're probably going to be reminded of your ex. So the less that you have to remember that whole situation, the better. You also might as well cut off communication, because there's no point in continuing to communicate with someone who has clearly been abusing you, and they're probably going to continue to abuse you or try to hurt you in some way if you communicate with them. So cut off communication. Take some time off relationships and dating. So in my opinion, it's a much better idea to focus on loving yourself and improving yourself and figuring out your boundaries and your standards and your own self-love, than it is to jump into dating again. Because if you jump back into dating when you have low self-esteem and when you're still that same person that allowed being abused, you're just going to let it happen again. You have to have some evolution and some growth in order to attract different types of people in healthier situations. So hold off on dating. If you still have low self-esteem, you're probably just going to make it worse because you're going to continue attracting toxic people. Consider taking a trip, or moving for that matter. If you want a break from the memories and the toxic thoughts and just being in that area where everything happened, take a trip, go explore somewhere that you don't know, start thinking about new ideas and new environments, meeting new people, and having experiences that will take your mind off of everything that you went through. And if possible, move. If you were living in an apartment together, and if you can move out of that apartment somewhere else in a different neighborhood or a different city, that is going to be so good for you because you will be starting fresh with no memories whatsoever every time you walk into your room or every time you park in your driveway. You will be out of those memories, and that's super important if possible. And if not possible, then think about redecorating or changing the paint color. So another great thing to do in order to move on from a toxic ex is to learn what boundaries you did not have before and start developing them. So if you used to quietly sit back and allow your ex to yell at you, for example, and someone tries to yell at you again, you can create a standard right then and there and say, no, do not yell at me. You have to know where you will draw the line with people. So go ahead and take some time to know what you will allow and what you won't allow. That's going to help you a lot when you deal with people. Another thing that I suggest is to get counseling. So a lot of times we avoid counseling and think that it's going to look bad if we're going and getting counseling, but honestly, counseling is something that anyone could benefit from. So if you really want to process your feelings and if you really want to get insight of the toxic behaviors that you were dealing with, or even dealing with moving on from a toxic ex, counseling is a really great option. It's going to help you change your patterns and your habits and the ways that you interact in relationships, and also the relationships that you attract. And my last tip is just remember that relationships should not be that hard to the point of abuse and clearly having a toxic partner. So if you got to that point where you really had your alarm bells going off and the relationship crumbled and you are now out of that situation, that is a good thing, and that relationship was not meant to be. Because even if you were trying to put in effort and time and trying to improve and trying to be better for your partner, you probably were doing that because you were trying to appease them rather than doing it for your own growth in a positive, healthy relationship where two people are helping each other grow. So that's what you want. You want a relationship where even through ups and downs and maybe difficult times, you still have that standard and that boundary where it will not get toxic. So you might have disagreements, or you might have times that are a little bit tough, but it will always be healthy and respectful of both people. That is how it should be. And if it wasn't that, then that relationship is not for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to comment if you have any suggestions or other tips to add. Your support means so much to me, and I will see you all in my next video. Thank you so much.